Michigan Out of Doors Online is brought to you in part by
Big bucks are not hard to come by. Ask these hunters who have one thing in common. No, we're not talking about big smiles on their faces. All these hunters learn the secret of how to grow big antlers. A product that requires no planning. A product that's easy to use and is guaranteed to grow buck's antlers to their full potential. It all starts here with the brand Lucky Buck. Guaranteed to grow bigger bone or your money back.
Hey everybody, welcome to Michigan Out of Doors. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We have got a jam-packed show for you this week, and we're going to start by doing a little smallmouth fishing on Lake St. Clair. Now, Lake St. Clair was recently voted the top bass fishing lake in the world. You're going to get to see why. We're also going to have a story on Antler Point restrictions, so you can kind of see what's going on here in the state of Michigan when it comes to Antler Point restrictions and some of the new regulations that are out there and some of the new proposed regulations for even next season. We'll have that for you. We're also going to have a tip of the week on how to take better pictures, and we're going to show you a guy that's doing some laser engraving. You won't want to miss that. Just lots of good stuff on this week's show, lots of variety. We've got a great show, so you stay tuned. I'm Jimmy Gretzinger. It's time for Michigan Out of Doors.
From the first spring rains to the soft summer breeze, dancing on the pine forest floor, the autumn colors catch your eyes. Here come the crystal winter skies. It's Michigan, Michigan out of doors. Someday our children all will see this is their finest legacy, the wonder and the love of Michigan. As the wind comes whispering through the trees, the sweet smell of nature's in the air. From the Great Lakes to the quiet stream, shining like a sportsman's dream, it's a love of Michigan we all share.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by Greenstone Farm Credit Services, making recreational land ownership possible across Michigan and northeast Wisconsin. Begin your land financing journey at one of Greenstone's 37 locations or visit greenstonefcs.com. By Meyer, a destination for hunting, fishing, and camping. From bug spray and tents to GPS and gas, Meyer has nearly everything you need to take on nature and get you there. Meyer. By G5 Outdoors, makers of the Quest and Prime bows. Manufactured and designed in Memphis, Michigan, G5 offers archery bows, broadheads, and accessories. On the web at g5outdoors.com. By Country Smokehouse, offering a variety of meat products. Country Smokehouse is located 3 miles south of I-69 on M53, just south of Imlay City. Country Smokehouse is a meat processor, a butcher, and a destination for sportsmen.
Game plan is pretty simple. We're on Lake St. Clair, so we're just gonna go out there and catch them.
Yeah? Few bass out there, is there?
One or two, you know.
One or two. Have you been fishing just a day or so here?
You know, I've fished here many times, but I haven't been here recently. The last time I was here is probably about a month ago, and the fish were still spawning. So I was here yesterday for a few hours, messed around a little bit, found some fish. So this should be fun.
Today I was hitting the water with one of the most famous names in bass fishing on one of the best bass fishing lakes in the world.
I mean, there's really not much. I mean, through the experience I've had here, I've just found certain areas that consistently hold fish. But the thing is on a lake like St. Clair, especially in the summertime, these fish just roam out here. They get about throughout the whole lake. I mean, you can basically just go anywhere, run out in the middle of the lake and start fishing, and typically there'll be some fish around. Some areas are better than others, but they move around a lot. So I just try to find, go to areas where I've found a lot of good fish before, and you know, try to look for some active fish, you know, groups of them. Usually I try to find them with my electronics.
If you're a bass guy, you have heard of Kevin Vandam, but his nephew, Jonathon, is really making a name for himself as well on the Elite Bass Series, and I asked him just what sets apart the top bass guys from us average fishermen.
You know, the elite guys are just able to make a lot of the adjustments and stuff on the fly, whereas that's where I see a lot of local guys, you know, struggle with doing that, you know, whereas if we're fishing like we are now and something tells me to pick up a drop shot, I'm going to pick up a drop shot rather than, you know, sticking with a tube or whatever, regardless if I'm catching them or not. You know, it's just all about going with your gut instinct and stuff like that. And those guys they're just really good at doing that.
Now, who's the better fisherman, your dad or Kevin? You might incriminate yourself.
No, I know. I mean, Kevin fishes a lot now. You know, my dad doesn't get to fish as much as he used to. But everyone always tells me that back in the day that my dad was better than Kevin was. You know, but I don't know. I fish with my dad still quite a bit, and he whips on me pretty good sometimes still. So he's a pretty good stick.
Well, Jonathon's dad is Randy Vandam, the owner of DNR Sports in Kalamazoo. And not only is he a good fisherman, but a heck of a good guy as well. Actually, Kalamazoo is where Ben Malish, our other angler on the boat, first met the Vandam family, and now is one of Jonathon's sponsors as well.
I had family that grew up in the Kalamazoo area, which is where Jonathon is from as well. And, you know, like many of our employees and our customers, he's an avid outdoorsman. So when the opportunity came available to have Jonathon represented us, Greenstone jumped at that.
Well, sponsors are a big deal in this sport, and much like NASCAR, these guys have logoed boats and trucks, and if you see them driving down the road, well, they are hard to miss. But that's part of the game when you're some of the best fishermen in the world.
That's a better one right there for sure. Look how fat he is. He's been eating healthy, full of gobies and perch, I'm sure. That's kind of one of the main forages out here. They have alewife stuff too, but that's more like it. You know, that's a 3.5.
Yeah, that's a good looking fish.
Pound range. That's what you want when you come to Lake St. Clair.
Nice job, young fella.
Lake St. Clair was recently voted the top bass fishing lake in the world, and when it comes to picking which bait to use, Jonathon definitely has his go-to bait out here.
There's a lot of stuff you can throw. Soft plastics kind of rules the roost out here. Anything that's made to mimic a goby is usually pretty dang good. Drop shot is a great technique also. I like the tube. The tube you seem to catch more of the better size fish. I mean, you still catch, you know, some of them smaller fish, but I found a lot of times the tube just seems to get some bigger bites for whatever reason.
There we go. Look at that.
That's more what you're looking for out here. And he ate it too.
He did.
Ate it good. That's exactly what you come to Lake St. Clair for.
Look at that fish.
4-pounder.
Well, we seem to just be hammering the fish today. Jonathon seemed to be reeling in one after another. Now, growing up here in Michigan, it's good to see that our state is represented pretty well in the bass circuits. And many of the folks watching probably wonder, as I did, just how do you become a professional bass fisherman? And just as how does all that work?
Finally, I moved up and I got into a couple pro-ams. You know, the Bassmaster Opens is what they call that series. And did pretty well in those. I mean, my first tournament I finished third in. You know, I fishing as a professional, and I was pretty excited about that. So at that point, you know, I knew I could compete with those guys. You know, but you know, it's still a long road. It was another 2 years of fishing those tournaments. You know, there's only 3 a year, and they have a points race, just like any you know, any circuit does, and finally, I you know, did well enough in the points, you know, because what would happen was I'd have 2 real good tournaments and then I'd have 1 bad one, you know, and that'd ruin your points. So I finally had a good year on the points on that deal, and that's how I qualify for the Elite Series is through the Bassmaster Opens. Yeah, you have to stay in the top 70 or something, I think, in points, 65 in points for the year, to stay in the Elite Series. So, and that in itself is pretty tough to do, just because those are the best guys in the world. So it's extremely challenging.
Now, I would imagine with the last name of Vandam, it's probably opened some doors for you, but has it made it tough in some ways? Did they expect too much out of you, or what do you think?
It has, it has its benefits and it has, its faults. There's not many faults. One of them is people is expect me to do well just because of my last name, So, I fish totally different than what Kevin fishes and some of those, and my dad even, we all have our own style. So I'm just trying to kind of make my path,
Well, for my time on the water with Jonathon, I think this young man is finding his own path. And with a name like Vandam, folks will notice him, maybe more so than some. But I think what they'll find is a good guy who simply loves to fish and is at home on the water here in Michigan's Out of Doors. This week's tip comes from Todd and Brad Reed. We'd featured them a few weeks back on the program. They are a father and son photography team, and since almost all of us have a camera in our pocket these days, I thought a few tips on how to use them was in order. So I had Brad run us through some of the good pointers for us amateur photographers, whether that's taking a photo of a sunset or our buddy's big buck this fall.
My dad and I teach a ton of workshops in the spring and fall. We teach people how to use their cameras on full manual, and we also teach people our 20 concepts of how to compose an image. We call it our 20/20 vision. And the #1 rule in our 20/20 vision is twice as close. What that means is, if you see a scene and you like it, shoot it, whether it's with your cell phone or a big camera. Then move roughly twice as close again and shoot it. Then move roughly twice as close and keep shooting it until you can't get any closer. And often the most exciting, the freshest view, and the one that will have the most emotional impact is that last photo where you were really close to something. So that is probably the #1 rule. The second rule, which is directly tied into that, is called immediacy, and that means putting something very close to the front of the lens. So even if you got a big lens on and your main subject is way in the distance, try to have something in the foreground, even if it's blurry or out of focus, and it gives your picture much more dimension. And what we try to do is make our photos look experiential. We want people to experience Michigan or a sunset or a big storm. And by putting layers in the photo, it sucks the viewer in and makes it three-dimensional. So immediacy is the best way to do that.
Well, there you have it. Some tips on how to take better photos from some of the best photographers in the state. But one thing Brad didn't mention that is really important, you have to get outside to really take good photos. The summer is almost over. Make sure you get outdoors and explore some of what this great old state has to offer.
Hi, I'm Jordan Brown. For this week's show, I was able to highlight kind of a hot button issue here in the state of Michigan if you're a deer hunter, and that's the new proposed antler point restrictions, or APRs. As many hunters know, this year in the northwest part of the Lower Peninsula, there will be new APRs in place, and it looks like the rest of the Lower Peninsula may not be that far behind. 2 new proposals in the works.
We have 12 additional counties in northwest Lower Peninsula that'll be under a 3-point antler point restriction this year. So that means that hunters will have to make sure deer have at least a minimum of 1 antler with 3 or more points on a side. Leelanau County's been under that restriction for 10 years now. It'll be the 11th season upcoming, and so these are additional areas where that will be in effect now. In Leelanau, we're pretty pleased with the point restriction they saw in effect. That was implemented under the same process that these 12 counties were. We conduct a survey. We randomly select hunters in the proposed area to evaluate whether they support or oppose the restriction. Now, a lot of folks would like to say they wanted a chance to vote or weigh in on the option themselves. The issue, if we just open it up to a regular vote, is it'd be very easy to organize either proponents or opponents to make sure you turn out those folks at the polls and sway the opinion one way or another. So we use this randomly selected sample to make sure we get a good idea of the average hunter, not just people that are avidly interested in this topic. And it has to be at least 66% of people that support the proposal in order for implementation to occur. We had about 69% in the 12-county area that were interested in seeing this implemented. So this will be for 5 years, and the process then has us repeat another survey to see if the support is still there to retain the regulation. So if people don't feel it's providing what they expected given the restriction on them, that opinion may sway and it may come off the books in 5 years. If they enjoy it or are even more supportive, then it'll reach the level of support needed to keep it in place.
Antler point restrictions brought forth to the DNR must meet certain criteria, most notably protecting young bucks, which can be difficult, with certain parts of the state producing bucks with more antler points than other areas within the state.
The regulation has to protect at least half of yearling bucks. So the idea is if you're going to require hunters to be able to get a closer look at deer and count antler points, it should protect a decent number of deer. You don't want to burden people with a rule and not have hardly any effect from it. So if a two on a side rule in southern Michigan, why bother? It's not going to protect very many deer, but it would still require you to get a closer look than usual. What we find when just that basic point restriction comes in place, which generally means it needs to have at least 4 points on a side in southern Michigan, at least 3 on a side in the northern lower, and at least 2 in the upper peninsula. It really only graduates the standard to where most hunters are then taking a 2.5-year-old buck. You see some notable increase in the 3.5-year-old deer that are taken, and not much beyond that. So this doesn't produce trophies. It doesn't even guarantee that you're going to produce a lot of additional mature deer, but it elevates by about a year or maybe 2 what the average deer taken is in most of these places.
One big complaint about the APRs is about the effect it may have on young hunters. The DNR has taken steps to avoid losing young hunters by allowing youngsters with a mentor license to continue hunting bucks of any size.
So one of the key things to remember is that all hunters in all seasons in that area have to abide by this minimum 3-point rule, except for youth with a mentored license. A mentored license gives you two deer tags, and they're essentially different from all other tags. So those are good for any deer. They don't have to abide by the restriction. The other thing to remember is everywhere in Michigan, if hunters take 2 bucks, at least one of them has to have 4 points on a side. People are familiar with this if they buy a combination deer license. What's called the restricted tag has that printed on the side. But for the few folks that still buy an archery tag and then wait and buy a firearm license later, even those people, if they take 2 bucks, one of those deer is supposed to have 4 points on a side. That rule has actually been in place since 1997, and in nowhere where any of these point restrictions are adopted is that changed. So in some ways we've had point restrictions in Michigan for that many years now.
With one proposal already passed, the rest of the Lower Peninsula doesn't look too far behind, with 2 more proposals in the works.
We have 2 other proposals that have come forward that could potentially be implemented in 2014. So they're under the same process where we'll conduct a survey late summer, early fall this year to see what the level of support is. They would include a number of other counties in the northern Lower Peninsula, basically everything that's not under a point restriction or not part of Deer Management Unit 487, which is our TB zone, and that's proposing a 3-point on a side rule there. There's another proposal for all of southern Michigan, or Zone 3 of our hunting and trapping zone boundaries, and that would require a 4-point on a side regulation there. So both of those surveys will be conducted to see if the support is 66% or more for implementation for 2014.
After hearing the DNR side of things, I was able to sit down with one of the guys spearheading the other proposals. Tony Smith of the Lower Peninsula Deer Management Initiative filled me in on the other 2 proposals.
I'm with the Lower Peninsula Deer Management Initiative, and we've got a proposal in front of the Department of Natural Resources right now to proposing a 3-point mandatory antler point restriction in the balance of Zone 2 that's not already under mandatory antler point restrictions. And we've also proposed a 4-point on one side mandatory antler point restriction in all of Zone 3, which is the southern Lower Peninsula. These proposals are in an effort to protect more of the 1.5-year-old buck age cohort And these two proposals will actually protect 70% of that age cohort. Through the proposal process, we have to protect at least 50% of that age class in order for the DNR to accept the proposal. So that was the last resort, the only thing that was available for us to propose in order to meet those goals.
There's lots of questions and concerns about APRs from a variety of different types of hunters opposing the issue. Most notably, guys who can't spend much time in the woods, or those who claim to be meat hunters. I asked Tony what his response was to these hunters.
You know, for the guy that says, well, I only get a couple of days a year to hunt, or you know, gosh, I just can't take my vacation time like I want to, or I'm specifically a meat hunter. We're not insensitive to that. We're dealing with this issue on a macro level. Hunters have indicated by and large in hunter surveys that they're dissatisfied with their hunting experience, their opportunities not only on rack bucks, but on bucks in particular. Dissatisfied that if they do choose to pass a buck, that there's little opportunity for that buck to survive with the current regulations, especially on public hunting grounds. We understand that this is a hot button issue. We're fully aware of that. We're right in the middle of addressing all these questions. This is simply for a 5-year test period. The antler point restriction, if imposed, would be for a 5-year test period, at which time the DNR would survey the hunters in that affected area again. It would need to obtain 66% support in order to be enacted permanently. And we believe that if, due to the Leelanau experience and the experience in DMU 122, that there'll be wider acceptance after hunters hunt under those restrictions for 5 years. And certainly, I mean, we're all for continuing management, being proactive rather than reactive. And you know, if down the road the antler point restrictions aren't the best thing for the herd, we'll be the first ones in line to propose something else that's more adequate for the changing times and the changing hunting demographic.
Change appears to be on its way here in Michigan, and whether you're for or against APRs, it's important to remember that we're all hunters, and division within the sport bodes well for no one.
Well, to round out this week's show, we've got a couple minutes on something I really knew nothing about, and that's laser engraving. Now, whether that's on the stock of a gun or something you're going to hang in deer camp, it's quite an interesting process. My travels around the state get me to new spots every year. A few weeks back found me in White Pigeon, a stone's throw from Indiana, looking for the garage of Lee Davis. Now, Lee does some engraving, and since I was in the area, I decided to stop by and see just how this all works. Lee does this on the side, but is doing more and more engraving on just about anything you can imagine. And from what I saw, it seemed to me to be just what every deer camp should have.
Blazing Guns Laser, we engrave various materials, substrates. Not only substrates, but I can do ovals. When I receive a photograph or download a photograph from someone, what I have to do is bring it up in what is called photo paint. I process it, I resample it for size. So once I get the size I'm looking for, also have to put a DPI, was dots per inch, horizontal and vertical. The machine that we use here is a Laser Pro machine. It's a CO2 laser engraver. The laser engraver, it's like a printer. You process the stuff on the computer, send it over to the laser engraver, and it will print whatever you have on your screen.
Lee does a lot of aluminum work, and let me tell you, it's cool to watch. Once he loads the image into his system, it's not long after that the laser is doing its thing. Now, Lee does do some work on guns as well, and really seems to enjoy making these images come to life. So if your deer camp needs a little facelift, or you're trying to find that something for the person in your life that has it all, well, maybe the little town of White Pigeon holds what you're looking for. It's just amazing the stuff you find and the people you meet in this great state. Well, hey everybody, thank you so much for watching Michigan Out of Doors this week. If you missed part of this week's show or last week's show, want to see what we've been up to, you can always check out our website at michiganoutofdoorstv.com. We have full episodes of the show there. And if you do the Facebook thing, we're on there as well. We'd love to have you join the conversation there. And coming up over the next few weeks, we've got a lot of brand new stuff coming here in Michigan Out of Doors, kind of some offbeat, kind of irregular stuff. I'm actually going to be doing some gar fishing tomorrow for the first time with a hook and a line, and actually heading to Beaver Island this week as well to do a little smallmouth fishing and some carp fishing up there. So lots of good stuff coming over the next several weeks. Hopefully you'll join us right back here next week on your PBS station.
Michigan Out of Doors is presented by Pictured Rocks Boat Cruises of Munising, exploring Lake Superior's Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore with its sandstone cliffs, caves, waterfalls, and lighthouses. Pictured Rocks Boat Cruises on the web at picturedrocks.com. By Rosie Brothers. Located in Dryden, Michigan, Rosie Brothers has been serving Michigan for over 40 years. Specializing in outdoor needs, Rosie Brothers features Kubota tractors and equipment for use in farm, home, or commercial needs. On the web at rosiebrosinc.com. By Propane. Exceptional energy. Propane retailers promote the safe use of Michigan-produced gas energy in homes, farms, and businesses across our great state. Learn more at usemichiganpropane.com. By Meyer, a destination for hunting, fishing, and camping. From bug spray and tents to GPS and gas, Meyer has nearly everything you need to take on nature and get you there. Meyer. Closed captioning is brought to you by Propane. Exceptional energy. Propane retailers promote the safe use of Michigan-produced gas to outdoor enthusiasts across our great state.
When I wander far away, a dream stays with me night and day. It's the road that leads to my home state. I am a Michigan man. Changing seasons paint the scene like rainbow trout in a hidden stream. The white-tailed deer in the tall pine trees. I am a Michigan man. I am a Michigan man. Ask where I'm from and I'll show you my hands. Lord above, I love this land. I am a Michigan man. From the Keweenaw down to St. Joe, Kalamazoo, East to Monroe, to St. Marie and back again. I am a Michigan man.
That's more like it.
I am a Michigan man. Ask where I'm from and I'll show you my hands. Lord above, I love this land.